wiped grease from his hands, and looked at the clock on the wall. It was late. The repair shop had been empty for hours, and the lights of Kappa 7 had dimmed to their night cycle. Most sensible people were asleep in their quarters or drinking at the bars near the station's center. Was neither sensible nor tired. He had a broken navigation computer spread across his workbench, and he would not sleep until he understood why it kept sending ships towards stars instead of around them. The shop was small and cramped, tucked into a forgotten corner of the station's lower levels. The walls were covered with shelves, and the shelves were covered with parts. Broken communicators, dead power cells, circuit boards from a dozen different species. Collected them all. He fixed what he could, and he learned from what he couldn't. That was his way. That had always been his way. He was reaching for a diagnostic tool when he heard the door open. This was unusual. The shop's location was not easy to find. Had chosen it specifically because he did not like interruptions. Customers who found their way to his door were usually desperate, and desperate customers were often the most interesting. He turned around, expecting to see a drunk spacer with a broken communicator or a merchant with a damaged translator. He did not expect to see a child. She was small, very small. She barely reached his knee, and her skin was the color of polished black stone. It seemed to absorb the light around her, making her appear as a shadow given form. Her eyes were large and round, filled with swirling colors that reminded of distant galaxies. She wore a simple dress that shimmered like starlight on water. She was not human. That much was obvious. Had seen many alien species during his years on the station, but he had never seen anything quite like this child. She seemed ancient and young at the same time, fragile and powerful in equal measure. She stood in his doorway clutching something against her chest, and her galaxy eyes were wet with tears. Did not move. He had learned long ago that sudden movements frightened small things, and this child was clearly frightened enough already. "Hello there," he said gently. "Are you lost?" The child shook her head. She took a step into the shop, then another. Her bare feet made no sound on the metal floor. She looked up with desperate hope. "You fix things," she said. Her voice was high and soft, and her comment was careful and slow, as if each word required great effort. "The people outside said you fix things that others cannot fix." Nodded. "I try. What do you need fixed?" The child held out the object she had been clutching. It was an android, roughly the size of a human doll. Could see immediately that it was not human technology. The design was elegant and strange, all flowing curves and impossible angles. Its surface was made of something that looked like crystal and metal woven together. Its eyes were dark. Its limbs hung loose and lifeless. "My friend," the child whispered. She stopped. "She will not wake up." Took the android carefully. It was lighter than he expected, and warmer too, as if some trace of life still lingered inside its shell. He turned it over in his hands, studying it. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Every joint moved smoothly. Every surface was perfect. This was not a toy. This was a work of art, created by hands that understood technology far better than any human engineer. He looked at the child. "What happened to her?" "I do not know." The tears in her galaxy eyes began to fall, leaving silver trails down her dark cheeks. "We were traveling. There was a bright light. Everything shook. When it stopped, she would not move anymore. She would not talk to me." Understood. The station had experienced a power surge 3 days ago, caused by a passing ion storm. The surge had damaged systems throughout Kappa 7. His own equipment had barely survived. If this android had been exposed to the surge without proper shielding, its delicate circuits might have been overwhelmed. He knelt down so that his eyes were level with the child's. "What's your name?" The child made a sound that could not reproduce. It was like wind chimes and distant thunder mixed together. She paused, then tried again. "In your words, it means little star." "Little star," repeated. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Mar." She tested the word carefully. "Can you fix my friend? Can you wake her up?" Looked at the android again. He could see the damage now, dark lines spreading through the crystal like cracks in ice. The technology was far beyond anything he had ever worked with. The materials were unknown. The power systems were a mystery. By any reasonable measure, this repair was impossible. He looked back at little Star. Her small hands were clasped together, and her galaxy eyes held a universe of hope. "I will try," he said. The child's face transformed. Her smile was like sunrise breaking over a dark world. She reached into a fold of her shimmering dress and pulled out a handful of coins. They were not like any currency recognized. They seemed to be made of captured light, shifting through colors as they moved. "Payment," she said, placing them on his workbench. "Is it enough?" Had no idea what the coins were worth. They might buy a ship. They might be worthless outside whatever civilization had created them. It did not matter. "It's more than enough," he said. "Now, let me find you somewhere comfortable to sit. This might take a while." He pulled a stool from the corner of the shop and placed it near his workbench. It was too tall for little Star, so he found a crate and stacked it next to the stool, creating a kind of step. The child climbed up and sat down, her feet dangling far above the floor. Walked to his small kitchen area and started the synthesizer. A minute later, he returned with a cup of cocoa. It was a human drink, and he had no idea if little Star could even consume it, but the child took it in both hands and sniffed it curiously. "It is warm," she observed. "It helps with worry," said. "Drink it slow." Little Star took a tiny sip. Her eyes widened. She took another sip, larger this time, and a small smile appeared on her face. It was not the sunrise smile from before, but it was real, and that was enough. Turned to the android and began his work. What neither of them noticed was the shadow that had followed little Star into the shop. The Empress of the Dominion stood in the corridor outside, hidden in darkness that seemed to bend around her. She was tall, impossibly tall, and her form seemed to shift and flow like a living night sky. Her skin was the same polished obsidian as her daughter's, but darker still, as if she had been carved from the space between stars. Her eyes held no galaxies. They held voids, deep and ancient and terrible. She had been searching for her daughter for 3 hours. Little Star had slipped away from her guards during the station docking procedures. The child was skilled at such escapes, and the Empress had been forced to track her through the station's lower levels, following traces of her daughter's distinctive energy signature. The trail had led here, to this cramped and dirty human repair shop. The Empress had expected to find her daughter in danger. She had expected to find some criminal or opportunist who had lured a royal child away from her protectors. She had prepared herself to deliver justice, swift and absolute, upon whoever had dared to interfere with imperial blood. She had not expected this. Through the shop's grimy window, she watched the human kneel before her daughter and speak gently. She watched him take the broken android with careful hands. She watched him find a seat for the child and bring her a warm drink. The Empress knew humans. She had studied them extensively during the border conflicts of the previous decade. Her reports described them as aggressive, territorial, dangerous, and primitive. They fought among themselves constantly. They expanded into space without thought for consequences. They were a young species, barely worth noticing, and certainly not worth trusting. And yet this human had shown her daughter more kindness in 5 minutes than most servants showed in a year. The Empress did not move from her hiding place. She did not announce herself. She did not retrieve her daughter and leave this place behind. Instead, she watched. Worked through the night, and the Empress watched. She saw him open the android's chest panel with tools clearly not designed for the task. She saw him study the alien circuitry with focused intensity, muttering to himself as he tried to understand systems that human technology would not develop for centuries. She saw him make mistakes, curse softly, and try again. She saw him stop his work whenever little Star became anxious. She saw him explain what he was doing in simple words, turning complex technical problems into stories the child could understand. She saw him wipe tears from her daughter's face when the child feared her companion was truly gone. Something stirred in the Empress's ancient heart. It was a feeling she had not experienced in a very long time. Curiosity. She settled deeper into the shadows and continued to watch. The hours passed slowly in the repair shop. The station's night cycle continued outside, artificial stars glowing dimly in the corridor lights. Inside, the only illumination came from his work lamp, casting a warm circle of light around the damaged android on his workbench. Little Star had fallen asleep on her stool, the empty cocoa cup clutched in her small hands. Her head was tilted to one side, resting against a stack of old data pads had arranged as a makeshift pillow. Even in sleep, her galaxy eyes moved restlessly behind closed lids, dreaming of stars and distant worlds. Worked in silence, mindful of the sleeping child. The android lay open before him, its crystalline interior exposed like the chambers of a mechanical heart. He had spent the first 2 hours simply studying it, learning the language of its design. Now he was beginning to understand. The technology was beautiful. Every component served multiple purposes. Every circuit path flowed with elegant efficiency. Human engineers designed machines that worked. Whoever had built this android had designed something that sang. The damage was worse than he had initially feared. The power surge had not simply disrupted the android's systems. It had burned through its central processing matrix, leaving dark scars across the quantum lattice memory core. The emotion synthesis matrices, the delicate structures that allowed the android to feel and respond to feelings, were corrupted beyond recognition. Sat back and rubbed his tired eyes. By any rational assessment, this repair was impossible. He lacked the tools. He lacked the materials. He lacked the fundamental understanding of the technology required to even begin. The sensible thing to do would be to wake Little Star, return her coins, and send her on her way. He looked at the sleeping child. Her dark face was peaceful, trusting. She had come to him because she believed he could help. She had placed her broken friend in his hands because some stranger on the station had told her that fixed things that others could not fix. He could not fail her. He would not. Stood up and walked to his shelves of salvage. He began to search. Outside in the corridor, the Empress continued her vigil. She had not moved in hours. She did not need to move, but could remain motionless for days when necessary. Patience was a virtue her species had perfected over of interstellar expansion. She watched the human search through his collection of broken things. She watched him reject component after component, testing each one against standards that existed only in his mind. She watched him grow frustrated, shake his head, and continue searching. The Empress had commanded armies. She had negotiated treaties with species older than humanity's oldest ancestors. She had witnessed supernovas and the birth of black holes and the death of civilizations that had lasted for millions of years. She had thought herself beyond surprise. She was surprised now. This human was attempting the impossible, and he was doing it for a child he had never met, a child who was not even of his species. He had no reason to care. He had no obligation to help. And yet here he was, 3 hours into the night cycle, still searching for a way to bring a broken toy back to life. The emotion the Empress felt was unfamiliar. It took her several moments to identify it. Respect. Inside the shop, finally found what he was looking for. It was a power coupling from a trading vessel, salvaged from a wreck 5 years ago. The technology was different from the android's systems, but the principles were similar. With enough modification, it might work. He returned to his workbench and began the delicate process of adaptation. The coupling was too large, so he carefully cut it down. The connection points were wrong, so he fabricated new ones from scraps of conductive material. The power flow was incompatible, so he built a converter from 3 different species components. Hopping the combination would produce the current the android required. An hour passed, then another. Little Star stirred in her sleep, murmuring in a language that sounded like singing. Paused his work to adjust the data pads beneath her head, ensuring her comfort. Then he returned to the android. The dawn cycle began outside. The corridor lights brightened slowly, simulating sunrise. Station residents began to emerge from their quarters, starting another day on Kappa 7. None of them ventured into this forgotten corner of the lower levels. None of them noticed the shadow watching from the darkness. At mid-morning, Little Star woke up. She blinked her galaxy eyes open and looked around in confusion. For a moment, she seemed not to remember where she was. Then she saw bent over her android, and everything came rushing back. "Is she fixed?" the child asked, her voice thick with sleep and hope. Did not look up from his work. "Not yet, but I'm getting closer." Little Star slid down from her stool and walked around the workbench to stand beside him. She watched his hands move with careful precision, connecting tiny wires and adjusting microscopic components. "You have been working all night," she observed. "Yes." "Were you not tired?" "Yes," admitted, "but your friend needed help." Little Star was quiet for a moment. Then she reached up and placed her small dark hand on his arm. The touch was warm, warmer than seemed possible for such a small body. "Thank you," she said simply. Finally looked down at her. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, and his face was lined with exhaustion. But he smiled. "Don't thank me yet. We're not done." He returned his attention to the android and continued working. Little Star remained beside him, watching everything he did. At noon, encountered a problem he could not solve. The power coupling was installed. The converter was working. The android's basic systems were responding to diagnostic tests, but the memory core remained dark. The quantum lattice structure had been too badly damaged by the power surge. Without replacement parts that simply did not exist on this station, perhaps did not exist anywhere in human space, the android's memories were lost forever. Explained the situation to Little Star as gently as he could. The android might work again, he told her, but it would not remember her. It would not remember their games, their conversations, their shared history. It would be like meeting a stranger wearing a friend's face. Little Star's tears returned. They flowed silently down her dark cheeks, silver rivers of grief. "She was my only friend," the child whispered. "The others are afraid of me because of who my mother is. Only she was not afraid. Only she played with me like I was normal." Felt something break inside his chest. He knew that feeling, the terrible loneliness of being different. He had felt it himself as a child, before he discovered machines, before he learned that broken things could be made whole again. He looked at the android's dark memory core. The damage was extensive, but perhaps not complete. Perhaps some traces of the original patterns remained, buried deep within the quantum lattice. Perhaps, with enough effort, they could be recovered. It was a tiny chance, an almost impossible chance, but it was not no chance. "Let me try something," said. He worked for 3 more hours. He used techniques that were experimental at best, dangerous at worst. He borrowed processing power from every device in his shop, linking them together in a network that should not have been possible. He wrote code in languages he barely understood, adapting algorithms from a dozen different species technologies. Outside in the corridor, the Empress watched. She understood what the human was attempting. She also understood that it could not work. The quantum lattice memory technology was her own species creation, developed over thousands of years of research. A human technician with primitive tools could not possibly recover data from a damaged memory core. And yet she continued to watch. At the 15th hour of his work, finally stopped. Little Star had fallen asleep again, curled up on a pile of soft rags had arranged on the floor. She was exhausted from worry and grief, her small body unable to sustain the emotional strain of the day. Looked at the android. Its eyes were still dark. Its systems were restored, but its mind remained empty. He had failed. He sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. His body ached. His eyes burned. His hands trembled from the fine motor work of the past hours. He had given everything he had, and it was not enough. Then he heard a sound. It was soft, barely audible. A small chime like distant bells. It came from the android. Looked down. The android's eyes were beginning to glow, faint colors swirling in their depths. Its fingers were twitching, testing their mobility. Its chest panel was vibrating slightly, the internal systems coming online one by one. And then, impossibly, it spoke. "Little Star." The voice was weak and uncertain, but it was real. Stared in disbelief as the android slowly sat up. Its galaxy eyes, so similar to the child's, focused on the sleeping figure on the floor. "Little star," it said again, stronger this time. "I had such a strange dream. I was lost in the dark and I thought I would never find my way back, but then I heard a voice calling me home." Little Star's eyes flew open. She saw her android sitting up, awake and alive, and she screamed with joy. She threw herself at her friend, wrapping her small arms around the android's crystal body, sobbing and laughing at the same time. "You came back," she cried. "You came back, you came back." Watched them embrace. His exhaustion was forgotten, replaced by something warm and bright and overwhelming. This was why he fixed things. This was why he had spent his life learning to repair what others had abandoned. Not for money, not for recognition, for moments like this. He did not notice the tears running down his own face until one fell onto his hand. In the corridor outside, the Empress witnessed her daughter's joy. She watched the human weep quietly at his workbench, unaware that he was being observed. She saw the android hold her daughter close and stroke her dark hair with gentle crystal fingers. The Empress had come to this place prepared to punish. She had expected danger and malice and the worst that lesser species could offer. She had found something else entirely. She had found kindness, pure, selfless, impossible kindness. The human had worked through the night and day without rest. He had pushed beyond the limits of his knowledge and skill. He had performed what the Empress could only describe as a miracle, though her species did not believe in such things. And he had done it all for a child he did not know, expecting nothing in return. The Empress had studied humans for decades. She had read their histories, analyzed their conflicts, predicted their expansion patterns. She had thought she understood them. She had been wrong. She remained in the shadows, watching, as her daughter and her daughter's companions celebrated their reunion. She remained as the human smiled and wiped his eyes and refused to accept gratitude. She remained as Little Star pressed her iridescent coins into the human's hands and insisted that he take them. She watched as gently pushed most of the coins back. "Keep them," he said. "Buy yourself something nice at the market, something for your friend too." "But you worked so hard," Little Star protested. "You must take payment." "1 coin," said, picking up a single piece of captured light. "As a keepsake, to remember our adventure together." Little Star looked at the coin in his hand, then up at his tired, kind face. She smiled her sunrise smile. "I will never forget you," she said. "Never. And I'll never forget you, Little Star." It was then that the Empress decided to reveal herself. She stepped out of the shadows and into the doorway of the shop. The temperature in the repair shop seemed to drop several degrees in an instant. The light from the work lamp dimmed, as if something was absorbing its warmth. The air grew heavy and still, charged with an energy that made the hairs on his arms stand upright. He turned slowly toward the doorway. The figure standing there was unlike anything he had ever seen. She was tall, impossibly tall, her form seeming to stretch beyond the physical dimensions of the corridor. Her skin was polished obsidian, darker than the deepest void between stars. Her robes flowed around her like living darkness, shifting and moving without wind. On her head sat a crown of captured starlight, cold and beautiful and terrible. But it was her eyes that froze in place. They held no galaxies like her daughter's. They held absence. They held the emptiness at the end of all things. Every human in the galaxy knew that silhouette. Every human had seen the images broadcast during the border conflicts of the previous decade. Every human knew to fear the royals, whose fleets numbered in the thousands, whose technology made human starships look like wooden boats, whose word could extinguish entire solar systems. This was an empress. This was power beyond anything could comprehend. He did not kneel. He was too surprised to kneel. He simply stared, his mouth slightly open, his heart hammering against his ribs. Little Star ran to her mother. Words poured out of her in her native tongue, a tumbling cascade of sounds like singing and thunder. Could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. The child was apologizing, explaining, begging. The Empress silenced her daughter with a gentle touch, one dark hand resting briefly on the child's starlit hair. Her void eyes never left. You knew, she said. Her voice was deep and resonant, carrying harmonics that seemed to vibrate in his chest. It was not a human voice. It was something older, something that had spoken when the universe was young. Swallowed hard, his throat felt very dry. Knew what? He managed. You knew she was not of your kind. The Empress took a step into the shop. The shadows seemed to follow her, deepening the corners of the room. You knew the technology was beyond you. You knew there would be no reward worthy of the effort you expended. Nodded slowly. He could not deny any of this. And yet you helped her. Another step closer. You worked through the night. You sacrificed your sleep, your energy, your resources. You performed what my own scientists would consider impossible, all for a child you had never met. She was scared, said. His voice sounded small and thin compared to hers. Her friend was broken, that's all that mattered. The Empress stopped. She was very close now, close enough that could feel the cold radiating from her form, close enough that he could see the ancient depths swirling in her void eyes. All that mattered, she repeated softly. Little Star tugged at her mother's robes, speaking urgently in their language. The android, still weak from its restoration, added its voice to the child's pleas. The Empress listened, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked down at her daughter. Return to the guards, she said, speaking in common now, perhaps so could understand. They have been searching for you. They are worried. But mother... Go, I will join you shortly. I wish to speak with this human alone. Little Star hesitated. She looked out with those galaxy eyes, fear and gratitude, and something like love mixed together in their swirling depths. He is good, she told her mother. He is kind, please do not hurt him. Go, child. Little Star went. She took her android by the hand and led it out of the shop, glancing back over her shoulder one last time before disappearing into the corridor. Was alone with the Empress. He expected threats. He expected demands for explanation. He expected the cold justice that they were famous for, the ruthless efficiency that had made them one of the most feared powers in the galaxy. What he did not expect was for the Empress to incline her head. It was a small movement, barely noticeable. A slight bow of that crowned head, a brief lowering of those void eyes, but had studied enough alien cultures to understand its significance. It was a gesture of respect. My people have misunderstood yours, the Empress said quietly. We saw your wars and thought we knew your nature. We watched you fight among yourselves and believed violence was all you were capable of. We did not think to look at your repair shops. Did not know how to respond. He stood in silence, waiting. I watched you, the Empress continued. From the corridor, I watched you work through the night to save a broken toy. I watched you comfort my daughter when she wept. I watched you refuse payment for what you had done. She paused, studying him with those ancient eyes. Why? It was a simple question. It deserved a simple answer. Because it was the right thing to do, said. The Empress considered this. The right thing, yes, such a simple concept, such a difficult practice. She moved to his workbench and examined the tools scattered across its surface. Her dark fingers traced the outline of a human diagnostic scanner, a device that must have seemed laughably primitive to her. Do you know how many species I have encountered in my existence? She asked. Thousands. Some have been ancient beyond your comprehension. Some have mastered technologies that make your greatest achievements seem like children's games. Some have built empires spanning entire galaxies. She turned to face him. Very few of them would have done what you did last night. Very few of them would have helped a lost child, expecting nothing in return. Your species is young, human. Your technology is crude. Your history is brief. But you have something that many ancient races have lost. What's that? Asked. Kindness, the Empress said. Simple, unreasoning kindness. The willingness to help another being not because it benefits you, not because you are obligated, but because you see suffering and cannot turn away from it. She reached into the folds of her living darkness robes and something small. It was a device, roughly the size of his palm, made of the same crystal and metal weave as Little Star's android. It glowed with a soft inner light. "This is a direct communication link to the Dominion," the Empress said, placing it on his workbench. "With this, you can contact my people at any time, for consultation, for assistance, for friendship if you wish it." Stared at the device. He understood its implications. Such a gift was not given lightly. Such a connection was not offered to just anyone. "I don't understand," he said. "I just fixed a toy, that's all." The Empress smiled. It was a strange expression on her ancient face, like sunlight breaking through eternal night. "You did not just fix a toy," she said. "You restored my daughter's dearest companion. You gave her back her only friend. You showed her that kindness exists even among strangers, even among species that do not know each other." She moved toward the door, her shadow robes flowing behind her. "And you showed me that I was wrong about humans. I came to this station believing your kind was primitive and dangerous. I leave believing that you may be something else entirely." She paused at the threshold. "They have a saying," she told him. "We believe that the true measure of a species is not found in their weapons or their wealth or their technology. It is found in how they treat those who cannot benefit them. By that measure, human, your kind may be greater than empires that have lasted for millions of years." She stepped into the corridor, found his voice at last. "Wait," he called. Will I see little Star again?" The Empress looked back at him. Her void eyes held something that might have been warmth. "My daughter has asked me the same question," she said. "She has requested permission to visit you again during our travels through this sector. I have granted this request." Felt something loosen in his chest. He had not realized how much he wanted to see the child again until that moment. "Thank you," he said. "No," the Empress replied. "Thank you for reminding me that the universe still holds surprises, even for those who have watched its stars be born and die." She was gone then, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor, returning to the daughter who waited for her. Stood alone in his repair shop, surrounded by broken things and salvaged parts, holding a gift that would change the course of human history. He did not know that yet. He did not know that the communication device on his workbench would lead to trade agreements and diplomatic relations and a partnership between species that would reshape the quadrant. He did not know that scholars would study this moment for generations, trying to understand how a chance encounter in a forgotten repair shop had altered the fate of civilizations. All he knew was that a frightened child had come to him with a broken friend, and he had helped her. That was enough. That had always been enough. Picked up the Empress's gift and held it carefully. It was warm against his palm, pulsing with gentle light, like a small heart beating. Then he set it aside and began cleaning his workbench. There would be other customers tomorrow, other broken things that needed fixing, other people who needed help. That was the work. That was what mattered. He was still cleaning when little Star returned an hour later, dragging her android behind her, carrying a bag of sweets from the station market. "Mother said I could visit," she announced, climbing onto her stool as if she had always belonged there. "She said you would not mind." Looked at the child, at her galaxy eyes and her sunrise smile and the android friend sitting beside her. He thought about everything that had happened, everything that might happen, everything that could grow from this small seed of connection. "I don't mind at all," he said. And that was how it began, not with treaties or negotiations or the grand gestures of empires. It began with a broken toy and a cup of cocoa and a tired technician who could not turn away from a crying child. It began with kindness. The smallest things, they would later say, often cast the longest shadows. They were right, is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.